And welcome to the Sports Box, where the only opinion that matters is still right here. I am Mike Galetta, aka Hamilton Mike, along with my partner Brian, the Ranger at Heart, bringing you another NFL special, 32 fans and 32 NFL teams. Didn't we say that before? 32 fans?
It's hard, but we're getting there.
Oh my God. I wouldn't say a train wreck, but it's tough. Today we're going to talk about the NFC South. We're going to stroll on down to Atlanta. Well, not really, because we found a local guy in the area that's going to talk about the Falcons. He goes back to the Glanville days. That's right, folks, the Jerry Glanville days. So he is, I don't want to say a dirty bird, but he knows about the dirty bird. So let's talk to Atlanta Falcon fan Aaron Sherwood. Aaron, you on the line?
Yes, I am, Macho Man.
Attaboy, there he is. So let's talk a little Falcons. Brian, stat me.
Atlanta Falcons. They were 8-8 last season, second place in the NFC South, but did not go to the playoffs. Offensively, they were 18th on the ground, but 6th through the air. Defensively, 14th against the run, 18th against the pass. They did go defense in the first round. 17th overall, took safety Keanu Neal out of Florida. They did add Alex Mack, but lost Jake Long and didn't bring back Roddy White. It's a very disappointing season for the Falcons, who just can't seem to get it together after a few successful seasons. They haven't been to the playoffs since losing the NFC Championship game back in 2012. Dan Quinn was able to get the team to 8 wins following 4 and 6 win seasons by Mike Smith. The team clearly expected more. Devontae Freeman was somewhat of a surprise, but he had a fantastic year on the ground. But like most teams in the league, the Falcons will only go as far as Matt Ryan will take them. Julio Jones continues to be just an absolute elite wide receiver threat on the outside. Going to be a very high fantasy football pick this year. But they did lose longtime Falcon Roddy White. He was not brought back again. Father Time catches everybody. But Matty Ice is now solidly on the wrong side of 30, so time's kind of ticking on this team to do something. So, Aaron, if you look at the team last year, was Devontae Freeman's year really a surprise, or was it just it was finally his time?
Well, I think it definitely was partly his time. You know, they drafted him high, and they expected a lot out of him. I think based on his rookie season, it made a lot of people kind of wonder how good he was going to be, but. With the competition, with Tevin Coleman and everything, I think you're going to see more of the same this year. I'm not sure which one will finish the season, being, their top back, and they also got Teron Ward. So they have a lot of options in the backfield, and, I think you're going to see a lot of running game and probably, a lot of play action. I'm a little worried about Shanahan's offense, though.
Okay. The big question I have for you, we had talked about this briefly, Aaron, before you came on today. The play of Matty Ice. I mean, here's a guy, Matt Ryan, that was brought in to be the man, and I would say for the most part is the man, but you know what? He hasn't gotten Atlanta to that next level. People say he doesn't have the weapons, he doesn't have this. Well, you know what? He's got a pretty good core around him for the last couple of years. What is the deal with Matt Ryan? Can he get the Falcons to the next level, or is this going to be kind of a waste of a quarterback?
Well, I think last year, once they tailed off, I think he started to get a lot of heat. And, I've always felt that way about him, especially, watching Vic under center for him for so long. The big difference to me was always the arm strength. While Matt Ryan is a very good, NFL quarterback, he's never really displayed consistent arm strength, the ability to go downfield. He's been bailed out a lot by receivers like Julio Jones and Roddy White, where I think a lot of good quarterbacks in the league would have had similar production. So I think this really is a make-or-break year for him. I think that's one of the reasons they looked at bringing Shaw in to back him up this year, to actually put a little pressure on him that there's a starting caliber quarterback behind him.
Okay.
So you think of a team like Atlanta that's had just a couple of years here where they just have not been able to get over the hump and really get back into the postseason. Some you can say is Matt Ryan not hitting it in the clutch, but I think they haven't really been that stout defensively in quite a while. They've tended to, they use a very high pick on Julio Jones, a very high pick on Matt Ryan, so they've paid attention to the offense, but defensively they just haven't seemed to put it together, and again, they drafted Keanu Neal out of Florida. What are your thoughts about the defense this year? They've been pretty average. They kind of need to be a difference maker if this team's going to go anywhere.
Well, I think you're going to see a little bit more of a different scheme this year. They're kind of shifting around the defensive alignment. So I think you're going to see Vic Beasley be a little bit more productive this year, coming from a linebacker position as opposed to the defensive line, where he was really So I think you're going to see a little bit more Seattle-style defense, a lot more aggressiveness. But I think you're going to see, on both sides of the football, not a complex scheme. I think you're going to see simplistic schemes, but executed very well, and hopefully on a more consistent basis. I think that's the big thing last year that threw them off, is they just lacked the consistency.
And also recently, just in Falcon history, they never really are a team, other than the couple of years that Tony Gonzalez was there, that really had a tight end that could really help the offense. I mean, again, they were almost, for a couple of years, almost like a recreation of the greatest show on turf. They had Roddy White, Julio Jones. I love Julio Jones. I think he's, if not the best receiver in football, top 3, no question about it. But as far as an intermediate game, they used a little bit of Freeman last year, catching balls out of the backfield, but they don't really seem to use their tight end much. Do you think that that's a missing piece to this offense that, if they addressed it more, could help Matt Ryan be more successful?
Absolutely. Or even, sometimes they executed it last year. That was some of the 4 passes Matt Ryan actually threw, was those short underneath passes to Freeman, who is also so small that when he didn't put anything on it, they were getting picked off, or he was throwing right at a linebacker that he didn't see. So I think there's something that needs to be done, but I'm not sure yet, again, because this is only the second year of Shanahan's offense, if that's really kind of the way his scheme runs. There's not really a lot of utilization for a tight end. If it's more that the Falcons' tight ends just really aren't that productive. But I think following up not only with Tony Gonzalez, but right before him, they also had Algie Crumpler. Right. So they, have had some productive tight ends for quite some time. And then, with Matt Ryan, unfortunately, after Tony retired, they just haven't had that same production. And I think that might have been a safety net for him.
Sure. My question is, Aaron, the defensive side of the ball. The secondary for the Falcons, I don't want to say it has been their Achilles heel, but it's struggled in the last couple of years because of the fact that if the offense gets rolling, they start to score, the defense just allows them to get back in the game. It's been almost a New Orleans style of defense and offense. Have the Falcons done enough in the offseason for that secondary for them not to get, I wouldn't say, be a shutdown secondary, but to slow the other team down to a point where they can stay in the game?
So, I think the corners are okay with, Trufant especially, but, the safety, they, did make some moves this year. So, we'll see with the competition that's going on. Keanu Neal, I have a lot of hope, with him that maybe, Quinn will be able to coach him up the right way and get him productive, to start the season. But they've always attributed the problems defensively to a lack of pass rush. And, statistically, I think you would see that as well, that, they've always been on the very low side of sacks, despite, having the ball thrown against them very often. So, I think the combination, a little bit of the change in the scheme, the movement of, one also, I wanted to bring up that they brought in Sean Witherspoon. I'm interested to see how he's going to be. They do have him listed as starting right now. And a few years ago when they, were on their playoff runs, he was a huge part of the offense, but coming off of his major injury, he wasn't productive last year, and then they brought him back. So I'm hoping to see him return to form, maybe create a spark, because he was that kind of defensive personality that, he was aggressive, and, he brought the defense, even though they never were statistically good. They did play with an attitude a few years ago when they made their playoff runs.
All right, well, let's get to the schedule, Aaron. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I'm looking at 4 out of a 5-game stretch that look like, the Falcons are going to have their work cut out for them. I'm going to start with Green Bay coming into Atlanta, and then the following week they go off to Tampa Bay. And then they play in Philadelphia, home for Arizona, and then home for Kansas City. I definitely think 4 out of those 5 games, being the Eagles is the only win, I think the Falcons are going to have a tough go at it. What do you think of that run?
I think we'll know a lot to start the gate, especially that the defense is going to get tested right off the bat, with Aaron Rodgers. But going down to Tampa, I got to say they have a chance. I can't say that they'll be favored, especially on the road.
Probably not.
A divisional game, but that should be a good tight game. They normally are.
Probably not.
But I think, ultimately that's how the season's going to play out, is instead of last year where they had, I think they were 8-0 and then they just, tailed off. I think this year, or was it 5-3? I think they might have gotten to before they tailed off. But this year, I think it's just going to be split down the road unless they can really get a strong surge in the second half. I think we're definitely looking at probably another 8-8 season, unless Shanahan and Ryan can really figure it out together and get that offense going consistently.
Well, the one thing I think that's in their favor with the schedule, I mean, having to go consecutive weeks to Denver and to Seattle, that's not ideal. But if you look at some of the harder opponents they have outside of those games, the outside of the division opponents, Green Bay, Arizona, Kansas City, they're all coming to Atlanta. And Atlanta has been a much different team in the Dome than out of the Dome. And not even just that, but later in the year, as it gets colder, they have home games, or they're going out to Los Angeles, or they're going to Carolina, so it isn't as though they're going to find themselves very likely in any kind of a snowstorm or any cold weather. Given the history of the team, I think that's probably in their favor, and they might end up upsetting a couple of teams just because of that, because again, there's no... I mean, they lost a game last year, I think, in Tennessee, or they barely won it, but Tennessee was terrible last year, so they're not a good out of Atlanta team, but having those games in somewhat of warm weather should help them out too.
Well, and I think hopefully some of that's going to change with Quinn's personality, on the team too, with running the ball more, as well as the more simplistic, basic defense that just gets the job done. So if he can achieve those goals, that's why I think they can see some more success on the road. But yeah, you're definitely right. Not having to travel to Green Bay or New England, in December is always an advantage.
Absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up. I'm looking at the schedule now. The only two really cold games that they might have is October in Denver, and then Philadelphia in November, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, they're warm cities where they're playing in the Dome. So
yeah, I mean they're getting Denver and Seattle out in October, so it's not going to be brutally cold. And you're probably right. That last cold game is probably November 13th in Philly. Yeah, it could be warm. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all the time we have for the Atlanta Falcons today. I want to thank the Aaron Sherwood for getting on the line and talking a little Falcons. Aaron, thank you very much for coming on the Sports Box with us. We appreciate it.
No, no problem. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. We're going to keep Aaron in mind that anything happens from Atlanta from here on out, Aaron will be our affiliate for the Atlanta team. So, Aaron, we'll get you back on the line if things happen in Atlanta and we need to get you back on the line. Is that fair?
Yeah, mark it down. I'll be there.
Very good. So that's all the time we have for the Sports Box. Keep an eye. We got some good stuff coming.
And make sure you're following us on Twitter at SportsBox Show. All of our new content's going to be posted there, and it gives you a forum to interact with us and let us know how you think we're doing, what we can be doing better, if anything. But remember, Mike,
that's
that
right.
on the Sports Box,
the only opinion that matters
is right here.
Is right here. Take care. Thanks for watching. See you.
Don't forget to subscribe.